Welcome to Beyond Adjustments, the podcast where we take a spine-tingling deep dive into the world of chiropractic care, minus the scary music and haunted house vibes. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest shifts in the profession, how chiropractic care is evolving from a fix it when it's broken model to keep it running smoothly strategy. Because let's be honest, your spine isn't a smartphone. You can't just wait until it stops working and hope a quick reset fixes everything. It's just not going to work. But don't worry. I'm not here to lecture you alone. I've assembled an all-star lineup of chiropractic pros to help us dig into this. Dr. Justin Dick, a scoliosis specialist, because some spines like to get creative with their shape, unfortunately. Dr. Josh Collinsworth, pediatric and prenatal expert, making sure kids get started right and parents stay upright. Dr. Juan Escobar, sports chiropractor, keeping athletes at their best because winning championships is easier when you can actually move. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, Dr. Lee Matthis, VP of Clinical Development and Professional Outreach, aka the guy steering the chiropractic world toward a high-tech, research-backed future. Together, we're going to explore how prevention and innovation are transforming chiropractic, why waiting until you're in pain is a terrible idea, and how new technology is making care better than ever. Sit back straight, roll your shoulders back, and get ready because this discussion is going to be just as educational as it is entertaining. Cue the music. All right, look at this panel. I'm taken back by all the just knowledge just kind of oozing out of my screen. I kind of don't know what to do with it. So I appreciate you all of you guys kind of coming on the show here, taking the time to really just educate us and bringing your experience to the table. Thank you so much, really.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. The pleasure and the honor is all mine. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here for the sake of time. Today, we're going to cover a couple of things. Like I mentioned in the intro, what we'll talk about first is the science of prevention and performance. So many people still think of chiropractic as a reactive tool, something they use for pain relief after a problem arises. I am the first person that's guilty of that. But we know that chiropractic care is much bigger than that. At least we should know. And it's about prevention. It's about longevity. It's about performance. So today, we're going to unpack that. We're going to unpack the shift and explore how chiropractic is evolving into a key player, really, in proactive healthcare and innovation. So I'll start by saying this. This is something I picked up along the way. I can't even remember who kind of gave me this image in my head, but parents take their kids to the dentist for checkups long before they ever have cavities, or at least they should, right? But when it comes to spinal health, people tend to wait until there's already an issue. Again, number one person guilty of that, even with my own children, unfortunately. But how do we shift that mindset? Dr. Josh, if I can call on you, you're the pediatric and prenatal expert, right? How do you make the case for starting care early? Like, what's the youngest patient you've ever adjusted, and what changes did you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in order to create this shift, and we talk about starting as early as possible with kids specifically, we really want to start kind of in that perinatal period, right? We want to start with mom. We want to start with dad, making sure that their nervous systems are right, because we just don't adjust spines. And I know that this panel, there are different backgrounds, But really at the root of chiropractic is there's a neurological fix that we're trying to get at, right? We're using the spine as an access point or a gateway, if you will. And so I think the shift really comes from education. Everyone that I've talked to, right, in society is like, oh, you're a chiropractor, whack them, crack them, snap a neck, do all the things. And I have to kind of, pause them for a second and say, well, actually, I'm not doing that to a day-year-old baby. That's not what we do, right? And so I think there becomes a huge educational moment, and things like this podcast, workshops, getting out into the community, whether it's, at vendor fairs or whatever it may be, the education component is huge. But then, when we think about, kind of like to your analogy, we'll take a kid, and preventatively take them to a dentist to prevent cavities and things of that nature. Well, why are we not getting their nervous systems checked, right? Because that controls everything, right? And so when you start shifting parents' paradigms and when you start kind of helping them to understand and realize that the cause of colic is not because they're just the lucky few, it's there's a neurological component to that, right? And so
Sure.
as parents start kind of understanding that, they're like, oh, you see those aha moments start turning on. And that's truly, as doctors, we're called to not only serve and deliver amazing chiropractic in whatever facility that looks like, but it also is to teach people. And so that's where, I love doing things like this, where we can get into the communities, get into people's radios, get into people, whatever they're listening on, to really show them that, hey, chiropractic is more than just a snap, crack, pop. It's truly you're truly kind of emphasizing and trying to impart healthcare starting from, 0 days old onward, because it's a continuum,
Sure.
not just a destination.
Yeah. Dr. Justin, I saw you nodding a lot during his response.
Lots of really good points, lots of really good things, and creating that mindset of chiropractic isn't just for pains and aches. It's for, in my personal life, I adjusted my kids in the operating room after emergency C-section. It was really neat because the entire OR dropped everything they were doing. It was like, whoa, we don't get to see this often. They dropped everything. They watched for 45 seconds. Then they sewed my wife back up. And so the doctor's right on point. Like, hey, we need to really get in with mom and dad before anything even happens. And then somebody with specialist like him can come right in and make sure on day one that baby's thriving.
Yeah. So if we can continue with you, Dr. Justin's, scoliosis screenings are often overlooked until adolescence. Like I think one time, I think I can't remember how old he was, but his pediatric doctor said, yeah, keep an eye on his back. Like it wasn't an official, let's check him out. But I think it is overlooked often and it's not taken seriously. So when should parents really start thinking about screening? What happens if scoliosis is caught early or too late?
Gotcha. Great questions. And, you assembled doctors here from a little different backgrounds. And so every one of these doctors on the call is the perfect person to do the screenings, right? From day one, they got hands on the spine, whether they take x-rays or not, they're qualified. They're some of the most qualified people in the world to be looking at this. And so scoliosis is found generally at age 12, approximately age 12. And we know that the earlier the intervention, the better the outcomes we're going to have. And so getting your patients in, getting your kids in, your family in to see one of these doctors is ideal, because we know that, say we catch it at age 8, we're going to have a much better response than if you wait until you're 25 years old.
Makes sense. Dr. Juan, you work with athletes, right? How early do you see young athletes benefiting from regular adjustments for maybe injury prevention or performance and what have you?
Yeah, I mean, as early as I would say like 5 years old, when they really start to increase the competitiveness of their sport, especially at that age when they are developing and they're going through growth spurts, it's really important to keep an eye on that spine. It's really important to keep an eye on not just the spine, but the extremities as well, making sure the biomechanics are sound. That way, we not only do we prevent injuries, but we can help them to perform at a higher level and be able to grow into the athlete that they're wanting to become. So it's super important.
So, Dr. Lee, if I can call on you for a second, you have a background of education. You used to be a teacher, and now you still are a teacher, in my opinion. But how can chiropractors better educate the public to really view spinal health as part of a total wellness rather than just a reactive tool?
Sure. I think that the way to start as a teacher is to meet the community, the patient, the society where it is. Very similar to Dr. Justin. I had the pleasure of delivering my daughter at my house, and she was about 10 minutes old when I adjusted her. That story by itself, I can tell pregnant patients, I can see, folks in the grocery store. My wife is a huge advocate of what I do as a doula. So, again, meeting patients where they are. We've treated several obstetricians in our office over the years, and they have a great respect for what we do. When we tell them, it's like, listen, pregnancy and back pain go hand in hand. Send mom in, I'll get her taken care of. And during that time, you can have really, really good one-on-one conversations, do some real patient education, and it's a grassroots effort. We are inundated with social media and what everybody thinks of us, societally. So building a bridge to where they're at. I think when you and I chatted last time, the land and expand concept. You can meet a patient where they are, land in their living room if it's pain driven, and build rapport and trust with them to meet their goals. Then you can expand on the influence you have on not just that patient, but their families and the communities they're in. So it is a true grassroots effort. Well, hopefully this is a big part of those grassroots that we can, speed it up a little bit.
Love it. So you guys have a lot to contribute when it comes to these kind of discussions. You bring your experience. The only thing I'm bringing to the table is my technology experience. So I decided to do a little bit of a fun take on the challenge question, or the $1 million question that I always throw at you guys. So what we're going to do is you're going to appease me and you're going to moan afterwards. But I'm going to share my screen right here. It is so cheesy, but it's going to happen.
There it is.
Oh, goodness.
I wrote this program last night.
Is this a roulette wheel?
Oh my goodness, it is.
It's just
As cheesy as it is, we're going to do it. Guess why? Because I have control of the mouse. So here's the challenge question. Here's the challenge question. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask you guys the $1 million question or a challenge question. And I'm going to spin the wheel, and whoever picture pops up is the person that's going to answer the question. Wow. Are we ready to play Amin's very corny dad jokey game? All right, great. Love the enthusiasm. Let's do this.
Let's go.
If every patient could do one simple thing to protect their spinal health before problems arise, what would you recommend? One simple thing. We know it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's the challenge of this question. Here we go. I wrote this last night, guys. Literally, put the HTML.
Hey,
Dr. Josh, winner, chicken dinner. Go for it, sir.
Is it me or is it Dr. Lee?
No, it's you.
There I am. Okay.
Yeah.
Pass the buck.
Yeah. So So if everyone could do one thing to protect their spinal health, what I would say is check the nervous system first. Get scanned. We use CLA scanning. So check the state of your nervous system to see where you're at. Are you in fight or flight? Are you in kind of this parasympathetic exhaustion mode? Know before you go. And so I would say, take the time to find a chiropractor who's willing to dive into that and not just look at structure alone.
Great answer. Thank you, sir. All right. So we know professional athletes invest in recovery tools like, massage, maybe, physical therapy, cryotherapy. Where does chiropractic fit in? Like, how does it give athletes an edge, so to say, So obviously, I'm going to start with you, Dr. Juan. You work with athletes daily. What's the biggest difference in performance and recovery between those who get adjusted regularly versus those who don't?
Well, I would say the biggest difference is the amount of wear and tear that they're putting on their bodies on a daily basis, right? Different kind of wear and tear, right? Because people that aren't athletes also are putting a lot of wear and tear, whether it's sitting for 8 hours a day or standing. But with professional athletes, because the level of exertion is so high, recovery is one of the fundamental things we really have to look at in order for them to prevent injuries and continue to improve and get stronger and faster. So that's one of the biggest things that I try to work on is how can we minimize that window of recovery for them so that they can continue to do what they need to do. So from a chiropractic standpoint, of course, getting the spine to move properly, the joints, the extremities, and then like Dr. Josh said, it all comes down to the nervous system, right? It's that brain-body communication that needs to be optimized at a high level so that we can have better coordination, we can have better reflexes, reaction time, because in professional sports, it's that 1% improvement that can make all the difference. So for me, it's like, how can I get them that competitive edge? Of course, we do a lot of like exercises that are going to address certain imbalances that they may have, or certain weaknesses. And we really want to find where the chain where the missing link is, and really hone in on that and be able to improve those deficiencies. And that makes all the difference in the world.
Gotcha. Dr. Josh, chiropractic isn't just for elite athletes like we've been talking about.
No.
How does it help kids and teens stay active and injury-free?
Yeah, I mean, my kids, they play lacrosse. They're wrestlers. They, play football. They do all the sports, right? Flag football. And really, when you think about it, much like Dr. Juan just said, when you're aligned, right, your imbalances become less, right? And so when you look at kids on a field, you can see which ones are coordinated and which ones aren't. You can see kind of, who has smooth gaits and smooth running mechanics versus ones who are just a little choppier. They're uncoordinated. They're very kind of two left feet kind of deal. And so when you think about neurology, and Dr. Juan touched on this, the coordination system, right? The cerebellum and how the vestibular system is working. I mean, that's an upper cervical issue, right? And so when we think about chiropractic, yeah, I have a lot of kids that my kids play with that come into the office and they're noticing better sleep. And so as a result of sleep, they're now able to recover better. And so they're less sore, they're less tired, they're more energized, so they're focusing better in school, but they're also performing better, where they need to perform in terms of, physical attributes. So it's more than just, come in, get adjusted, and, that solves the world's problems. No, you need to understand why that is. And truly, when we think about, again, going back, I will always and forever go to the nervous system, because when you go to that, there's so many things that depend on the nervous system. Every function of our body depends on it, from how you poop and sleep to how you perform on an athletic field. And everyone just is like, oh, well, the nervous system is not that important. I'm like, well, take it out. You don't have much left. So
Absolutely.
So it is very, very critical that kids get checked early and often to make sure that their nervous systems are firing the right way and that they're thriving and not just surviving.
Great. Thanks for that. Dr. Justin, scoliosis patients and your everyday patients as well, they often struggle with posture. I know I do, the biomechanics and movement imbalances and all that fun stuff. But what role does chiropractic play in helping them maintain function in sports specifically, and then also everyday life?
Gotcha. My office is a little bit different. I'm a corrective care doctor, specifically in scoliosis reduction. In my world, it's a little bit different than some of the others. We have great access to lots of patients. I live in Charlotte, Carolina. Millions of people here, massive, including the United States Performance Center here. So U.S. Taekwondo team, rugby team. We just have these people. And just like the other doctors on here, we are elite athletes, right? We had a girl in this weekend that just stunned everybody and did some amazing things. All because partly she's trained really, really hard, but she's getting adjusted regularly. And we can prove this now with these different tests, like, hey, an adjusted person can do X amount more unadjusted person. These are the things that we're testing right now. And so we're just taking it next level. In our office, I do structural correction. So we know that when the cervical spine's out, just like Dr. was saying, specifically, and then started getting in the upper cervical, we know that the centers, the sympathetic system is not firing on all cylinders, right? And so we're not as agile. We're not going to respond quickly. We're also not going to heal very quickly. So we work really hard on working on changing the structure in here, the nervous system to kind of relax, calm down, and fire appropriately.
Totally makes sense. I do have a follow-up for you, Dr. Lee. From your leadership perspective, where do you see chiropractic's role in sports rehab and performance, maybe optimizations, really evolving?
That is a wonderful question. I've had the pleasure of treating many athletes, professional, collegiate, junior tech hockey teams winning right now in Indiana. But it, again, to both Josh and Dustin's point, the nervous system controls everything. So if we want optimization, if we want the best there is, make sure we've got a clear, highly functioning nervous system is the way to lead a better life. But B, if that life involves high end sports accomplishments, then yes, that's one surefire way to make sure. We chatted earlier, when the nervous system's functioning properly, everything has the opportunity to function better. If it's not, and an athlete is going here and then taking supplements and lifting weights and this, that, and the other, they're not optimizing the gains that they would get from a proper diet, from proper sleep hygiene, all those other things that folks do for their health and their wellness. So making sure they have properly functioning nervous systems does lead to better athletic performance through training, through quicker recovery, as Dr. Juan mentioned earlier, all kinds of stuff there. Get the word out to those athletes is getting a lot easier. Most professional sports teams have chiropractors on staff. And so, if folks want to grow into an athlete, they typically start doing what pro athletes do earlier and earlier these days. So it's a really, really neat opportunity for us to kind of tap into that and be on the forefront of helping future athletes.
Yeah. I had Dr. Ken Kaufman on the show the other day. I think he mentioned I believe he's one of the chiropractors on staff with the Pirates, MLB team. I think he mentioned that every one of the MLB teams have a chiropractor on staff now, which I thought was really cool and good. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my little applet that I wrote last night again, because I have another challenge question for you. Here we go. Spin the wheel of $1 million / I'm going to stop talking now. Dr. Juan, and it's actually very appropriate because this is your kind of area of expertise.
There we go.
If a pro athlete came to you hesitant about trying chiropractic, what would be your best 30-second pitch to convince them?
Well, I would point to kind of some of the things we spoke about, how it's very ubiquitous now in the sports world to see sports chiropractic, right? I would also point out to some of the greatest athletes we've had that take tremendously great care of themselves, utilize chiropractic, right? Tom Brady is one of the famous ones, even like LeBron James, these high profile athletes that have achieved tremendous success have utilized this amazing tool with this chiropractic to allow them to get to where they are and to be able to do it for such a long time, like Tom Brady and somebody like LeBron James, right? I think that if they can kind of understand it and shift that perspective, like chiropractic is a vehicle for us to have access to longevity, have access to a full functioning, optimized nervous system, which I know we keep hammering on that, but that's like the key concept of chiropractic, because it does control everything. If we optimize that, then that's going to, make the world of a difference for that athlete. So I like to use testimonials. I like to use, talk about like the people that are actually doing it, because those are the people that they look up to, and those are the people that they strive to become one day. So I think utilizing those people can help us kind of get our point across, because they spend so much money. I mean, I think LeBron James spends like millions upon millions of dollars a year to have the body that he has and to be at the level that he's at. I mean, he's like 40 years old and he's still like doing things that I could never dream of doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I start. I like to make it simple for athletes so that they can relate to it and understand like why they need to do it. I find that the simpler you make it for them, the easier they grasp it, and they listen to you. So that's where I would start.
I'll let the fact that it was over 30 seconds slide this one time, because I like you. But let's segue a little bit into the technology and innovation piece, right? Because we know like technology today is literally disrupting not just like every aspect of healthcare, but just everywhere. I mean, AI has like literally transformed so many different just arenas, tech spaces, corporations, processes. So you've got, AI, you've got wearables, digital diagnostics, right? Everything is becoming like more and more common when it comes to these things. Where does, I guess what I'm trying to find out is where chiropractic fits in this rapidly evolving space. Dr. Justin, are there any new or upcoming scoliosis detection tools or advancements that could really revolutionize early diagnosis or correction?
Gotcha. That's a really good question. And we can start back at the basics of chiropractic. It hasn't been around that long. It really hasn't. Late 1800s, right? And so this is a relatively new study. While technology is advancing very quickly, and we are all part of this wave right now, but chiropractic itself, we're just getting started. Medicine has been around for thousands of years. And so as far as when we get into scoliosis, there's some doctors trying to lead the way with that, with different types of genes, different types of labs, different analysis. But there isn't really anything that says, hey, this lab is scoliosis, or this is this. We have a lot of predispositions right now of, hey, we want to look at this. We know through the modified Cox test, we can find scoliosis years earlier than actual an X-ray. And so when these docs are looking at their patients at 8 years old, it takes 30 seconds to do this test. Hey, we need to start looking at this a little bit closer, making sure that we're not developing these kinds of things. And these docs are great. They're hands down the best doctors in the world to be looking at that. And so we know that I have a paper that's going to be coming out next 2 months or so that correlates cervical spinal injuries overread by medical radiologists. Every one of my scoliosis patients has a cervical spinal injury, every one of them. So that creates a hypermobility, creates abnormal biomechanics, creates neurological impediment, and all of a sudden we go downhill from there. So there's not necessarily one thing, but we know that collectively our brains have enough information to put all these things together and say, hey, we need to start digging deeper into this.
Dr. Josh, if I can call on you for a second, when you're treating the kiddos and the mommies and the mommies to be and all that, have there been or are there any emerging tools that really improve patient outcomes or help even with early diagnosis?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit it with AI being so prevalent. We have wearables now, whether it's an Oura ring or a Whoop or, some type of HRV, Apple Watch, Garmin, whatever. There's so many tools out there, and this is where chiropractic really can shine, because before these things, we did just like thermography, right? We had the inclinometer, or the, what is that? The,
Neuroclinometer.
What's that?
The neuroclinometer.
The neuroclinometer. Yeah. And, that was a great tool, and that was really cutting edge for its time, and looking at thermography and reading, hey, there's temperature differentials between left side and right side of the spine which indicates, a level of subluxation. But now that we have technology with pregnancy, no one is going to shoot an X-ray on a pregnant woman, right? That's a contraindication there. But what we can do is we can use postural assessments. We can, download an app and look at, do they have a anterior pelvic tilt? Do they have a high right hip or a high left hip? Are their shoulders level? And we can do this just by imaging and literally just taking a picture of them. And then there's software that will actually kind of analyze that for you, in addition to using, insight scans. I use insight scans here in my office. If you know Dr. Fletcher, he's big on the CLA stuff. And so we use EMG, which looks at neurologic tension. We look at thermography, and then we look at the HRV. And that gives us a 360-degree view. In addition to our just physical analysis, it gives us a 360-degree view of how they're doing both physically, but also neurologically. And so when we combine those two and we do a report of findings, we can say, hey, structurally, this is where you're at. Neurologically, this is where you're at. And this is what we plan to do to correct those things. And now we're starting to move the needle, because it's no longer, oh yeah, you just feel tight. And, my question as a consumer would be like, tight compared to what? I'm carrying a baby, or, my child is only, 3 days old. Why are they quote unquote tight? Now we can actually give a little bit more analytical data. And we're not only just looking at subjective measures, but we're also looking at objective measures and combining the two. And so chiropractic is really taking off in the tech space because of all the tools and resources that we have, which is pretty cool.
So a follow up to that, for me at least, and I'll throw this out to anybody that wants to answer. Can we get in trouble with the technology? Because in my opinion, right, chiropractic care, keeping the main thing, which is getting your hands on the patient, I think is critical. Are we in any kind of trouble here? Like, are we going to get to a place where we could possibly rely too much on technology and not get our hands on the patients? And is that going to hurt or help?
I'm gonna jump in there. I mean, if you don't mind,
Go for it.
reasoning we can. You can witness healthcare going down the radicalized, higher level technology equals better healthcare pathway. That's proving untrue day in and day out. I do think coupling technology with what we do does allow us to have better income or outcome. Excuse me. That I have an intern with me right now, and she asked the other day. She said, "I notice you keep your hand on the patient most of the time they're on the table." And I said, "Yeah, they don't get that in any other healthcare facility." I said, "I want them to know where I am. I talk them through what I'm going to do." There's extreme power in touch that healthcare has lost a lot. Technology cannot replace that whatsoever, now or ever, in my opinion. I do think it can supplement that. With the whoops, I've worn a whoop for a long while. The R rings, all that stuff. I do appreciate technology a lot more now than I usually do. I'm a real cut and dried kind of simple is better individual. And that's just my personality. But I do like AI can overlay these huge data sets that we're gathering on ourselves with the wearable technology, but these huge data sets that are being collected through research institutes, through healthcare institutes, insurance companies are definitely going to be using this type of technology to kind of drive the future care. But what we do with that personal rapport that we build with the patient, the trust that they have in us, and just good old touch is not going to be replaced. Now, can supplement it by saying, to Justin's point, tight compared to what? Or what does that mean? If posturally you're not set up properly, what can that lead to? I look forward to reading, Dr. Justin's paper that's coming out. I think that's really brilliant stuff. We can use that and technology to amplify that message and get a lot of folks more, better without having to suffer as much. I don't know if I answered that question, but
you did. Thank you for that. If I could turn to you, Dr. Juan, we mentioned the wearables and the tech and all that, and I feel like in the sports arena, kind of where tech and AI diagnostics, kind of personalized recovery, tracking, all that, because they have the money really to spend on it. Are they maybe changing the way those tools specifically, are they changing the way you treat your athletes maybe? And do they maybe enhance or replace some of the traditional chiropractic methods?
I think if anything, it's enhancing what I do, because historically chiropractic has been very much like subjective, like, oh, I feel better by this, like it's what the patient is relying to you. But now with all this technology, we can really get a lot more objective and have metrics that we can go by to show like, hey, look, before I adjusted you, you ran this fast. After I adjusted you, you did it a lot faster, right? And be able to show that to them, that chiropractic is working. That what we're doing isn't just making you feel better, but it's actually making you perform better. And especially in the sports world, they're using technology is being utilized quite heavily, because they want to track every little thing that they possibly can, because I mean, that's really what the value of that athlete is. It's like, how fast are they compared to, the same person that's trying to fight for that spot, right? So I think if anything, it's helped us. Now, I do want to touch a little bit about Dr. Lee, what he said about like getting your hands on patients. I think that that's super important, and I hope that that never goes away, because I believe that there is a healing mechanism that's channeling through that touch. I think that adds to what we do as chiropractors. I don't know if you guys have ever read the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, but he talks a lot about that, how energy, how we feed off of each other, and how, it's about our environment that really affects, our health and how we function. So I think that's powerful. And that's what I love about being a chiropractor personally, is being able to get my hands on somebody, being able to really channel in that healing process. So yeah, but to answer, I hope that answered. Did that answer your question? I don't know if
I think so. I think so. Dr. Justin, I see that you went off mute. Is there something that you wanted to add?
I mean, there's no doubt all of us are talking about biohacking the body and getting it to perform the best it can. Chiropractic, hands down, is the most important. Hands on, like the doc said, will never be replaced ever. You can't replace our hands. You can replace technology, you can replace labs, you can do all this other stuff, but that hands on, like the doc said, will never be replaced. To have that knowledge of what to do, when to do it, and why we're doing it is so important. Now we have other tools that we can start biohacking the body, like vibration therapy, right? For your sports, it's releasing 361% of your HGH in 20 minutes by being on vibration therapy. It's increasing your proprioception, right? It's increasing your lymphatic flow. It's increasing your blood flow, right? You have some amazing tools. If you get into like regenerative therapy, now all of a sudden we have soft wave, stem wave, whatever you want to call it. You have the body's adapting so much better, put the nervous system functioning like even better, and it's game changing for these athletes, like what they're talking about. Now try applying that to the everyday person, and they're going to start excelling at whatever they're doing it, not just athletes, right? We're talking about our brains working better, we're sleeping better, we're functioning better, we're a better mom, we're a better dad, right? More importantly, we're a better mom and dad. We're raising the next generation. Sports are super, super important. But what happens if mom or dad goes down? The family unit goes down. It's hands down changing what we do.
Yeah. Love it. If Dr. Lee, if I can just go back to you for a second, just kind of had a thought about kind of from a clinical development perspective. We're talking about all these technologies and, all these new things coming up, right? And some could be truly valuable. But how do you determine whether a new tech is valuable for a patient care versus just a marketing gimmick, really?
So we base most of our decisions on three outcomes: the patient experience, clinical outcomes, and financial sustainability. If there's a $1 million technology that we could put in all 8 of our clinics that would help our patients, that would give them a better experience and better outcomes, financially, that's probably not what we're looking to do. But if there is an approachable financial decision we can make with technology in our clinics that will be financially sustainable, it'll allow for a better patient experience and improve our outcomes. That's something that we're going to look into systematizing and implementing throughout our whole clinic system.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Which actually is a very good segue into my challenge question. Applet, here I come. You guys are going to be talking about this. You'll see.
For years to come.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Here we go.
I might create one on my own.
I might have
I'll send you this.
Yeah. I put my family's picture on there for who takes the dogs out.
Dr. Lee. All right, here's your challenge question. If you had, and this is perfect because you were just talking about $1 million investment, so if you had unlimited resources to innovate in chiropractic, what's the one breakthrough technology or research project you'd invest in?
Whoa. I think from a research standpoint, if I was unencumbered by finances or technology or anything like that, I would want to see some overlay in the preventative aspect of what we do versus the reactive aspect in what we do. The way I see that is forcing myself into some insurance companies and saying, hey, let's check your patients. You start with conservative care. Let's check their quality of life. Let's check their clinical outcomes and their lifetime healthcare expenditure when they start and exhaust conservative measures before moving to more invasive therapies and technologies. I think we would turn insurance on its head, and they would start demanding that all patients who have any reactive healthcare needs start conservatively, start with chiropractic care. Again, what we could prevent, we can't really totally tell you what we can prevent, but there's a lot of things that we can help prevent or minimize the risk of occurring with proper biomechanics, proper neurological function, proper diet. There's a lot of common sense that I think our world could have injected into it. We'd be in a much better place all from a healthcare standpoint, spiritual standpoint, political, you name the system that seems to be broken right now. I think if we could, without being encumbered, I think if we could inject some good old common conservative thought processes, then we would be in a much better place and as humanity in general.
Sounds good. Thank you for that. And speaking of political, let's debate the future a little bit. No, let's keep politics out of it. Trust me, I'll get us all in trouble if I start talking. But where really is chiropractic headed? In this kind of section, what I'd like to do here is I want to talk about the challenges and opportunities that are really shaping chiropractic's future. Let's touch on specialization. I think that's kind of where I want to keep our conversation. We'll see where it goes, and I'm going to ask each of you to weigh in on a question that I present you. So, chiropractic really is becoming more specialized. Obviously, we have it represented here on the call, right? Scoliosis, specialization. You got pediatrics, sports performance, rehab. Is this making the profession stronger, or is it causing more, I don't know, I guess a good word would be fragmentation, maybe? So let me ask this first, and I'd like each of you to weigh in. We'll start with, I don't want to spin my wheel again. We'll start with Dr. Josh. We'll start with you. Your bottom left on my screens. Is specialization making chiropractic stronger and more credible, or the opposite?
Arguably, I would say it's making it stronger. And the reason why, right, is because, wherever you sit politically, we're not going to get into politics, but there is a tide that is shifting in this country anyway, and really throughout the world. But, in this country, we're kind of, we're one of the more developed countries, but we're kind of we're behind in healthcare. And When you look at how we do quote unquote healthcare in America, we have specializations, right? With medicine, with holistic practitioners. And the problem is that now people are waking up, right? Call it woke culture, call it what you want, but people are starting to wake up and realize that medicine, while we're grateful for it, and there are definitely, times where it is needed and warranted, there are so many other ways, holistic ways, to manage one's health and to really attain true health, not just manage symptoms. There's a big difference, right? So the answer to your question is really, it's layered, but I think that the fact that we have 4 different specialists here, myself being pediatrics, you've got, sports, you've got scoliosis, you've got, and there's, functional nutritionists, there's, chiropractic neurologists, there's all of these different specialties. They're all needed. But problem with chiropractic is that we have historically, kind of beaten each other up over semantics on what is a subluxation, on things that really, are beside the point. And so we, as a collective profession, and in addition to other professions, whether it be PT, OT, speech, whether it be occupational therapy, whether it be, dietetics, whatever it is, we have to, one, come together and realize, hey, what you do, what Dr. Juan does might be slightly different than what I do, but he's still looking at the whole person, and he's still putting his hands on people, and he's still trying to get to root causes and help people perform. Dr. Lee is trying to, again, work on families. He's trying to work on, moms that are coming in that, maybe you're having low back pain. Dr. Justin is trying to work on, kids who have scoliosis, and then maybe it's progressed, right? So we have to understand that collectively, we're all trying to attain the same thing, but we can't get in each other's way. In fact, we need to do more collaborative efforts and say, hey, you know what, Dr. Juan, I've got this patient who, they're a lacrosse player, and they're having issues in their SI joint and their IT band, and it's really creating problems. And now they've got this thing in their heel. What would you do to with this patient? Obviously they're not down in South Carolina, but they're up here in Virginia, but what can I do to help them? Or do you know of somebody that does work very similar to you that I can refer? We have to get more comfortable with the idea that we have a lot of answers for a lot of different conditions and people, and really getting to the root cause. And so when we do that, and when we start kind of unifying, that's when I think advancement will truly, take place. And that's what you're doing. You're unifying us, and we're having these collective conversations, because quite honestly, it hasn't been that historically, and it's starting to become. We're starting to turn the tide, but we're on our way.
Excellent. As doctors, that might have been the most important question and answer right there of this podcast.
Yeah. Which brings me to you, Dr. Justin, if you don't mind weighing in on that as well. I'd love that.
Well, specialties are always a good thing, and knowing my place is always a really good thing as well. As you're aware, I'm really good at what I do. I stick to pretty much that. If there's questions outside of that, you're going to see another chiropractor. You're going to see an integrative medical doctor. I don't have an ego when it comes to all of that. I'm really good at that. I stick to what I do. I'm researching this. The doctor mentioned that kind of earlier about research, the $1 million question. If we had unlimited funds, in my opinion, we'd be doing more research, right? Let's prove out what's happening, not just anecdotal. We have this in the office, prove it out. Everybody in here has their own specialty. Let's prove that out. Let's be the leaders in that. And that's game changing.
Gotcha. Dr. Lee, would you like to weigh in?
I would. I do not deny the fact that specialization is definitely going to help us and we're going to grow. I would like to push back a little bit. And again, I'm kind of in the bridging the gap from academic to application. I do a lot with schools. We have a lot of preceptors that come through, interns as well. And when a student comes to me or I'm on campus and says, hey, what specialization should I get? What diplomate should I get? My answer is always, you're getting the best specialization you're ever going to have in becoming a chiropractor. I do think our profession lacking a residency, rotational clinicals for various types of specializations like these 3 doctors have. I think that is a hindrance in that we don't get the opportunity to go into a quote general practice right out of school. We don't get our hands on patients to decide what our community needs, to decide how we're drawn to certain demographics of patients. When I had our third child, I thought I was done with children. Woohoo! No more pregnant women, no more babies for me, man. Woo! No, my wife was a doula, and I got a reputation in this neck of the woods for all the home birth parents, all the midwifery moms, all the pediatric patients. They still flock into my office. Now, I'm good at treating children, but I also like following them through their growth patterns of infancy, toddler, child, all the way up into high school and getting out of high school and taking care of them through those. So again, from a specialist standpoint, my geography requires that I be a little bit more broad and more of a niche practitioner. I do think that we're greatly underserved as a country with chiropractors. So I'd love to see more folks go into a generalized practice for a certain amount of time in their career, 5 to 10 years, so that they can suss out what they're good at. To the doc's point there, he's real good at what he does, and he has no ego. And if you're not in his wheelhouse, let's get you to another chiropractor or another provider. I think that is extremely mature, and you don't really get that. Dunning-Kruger law says that when we graduate, we're the best there ever was until reality kicks us in the teeth. So I do think the humbling general practice is going to increase the amount of people who can get under chiropractic care. It's also going to allow us a little bit more leeway in that good old principle 6, the principle of time, to allow to find who we are and who we can serve our communities by becoming.
Yeah. And I would argue, and who am I, but I would argue that having a general practice is a specialization in and of itself. You have a kind of a 1,000-foot view. And then if something were to arise, say scoliosis, that needs a more corrective care approach or a more aggressive corrective care approach, you would reach out to a Dr. Justin, for example. I mean, that's kind of how I would look at it. General practice in and of itself, I would say, is a niche, right? As is pediatric, as is, scoliosis, etc. At least that's how I see it, as, that Mr. Techie here with my little, I'm creating a spreadsheet silently shirt. But Dr. Juan, can you weigh in for us a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I also think about specialization as, looking at it from the provider perspective of what they enjoy and what they're passionate about and the type of people that they want to work with, right? Like for me, I relate to athletes a lot and I love working with that demographic, right? So that brings me joy and it makes me want to dive in deeper and get better at what I do, right? It makes me happy. So I think it's also important to shed some light on like the provider as well and like what that does to them. Because I think that if you are in a position where you're really passionate about what you're doing, you can become an expert at that one thing and be able to provide more value to the person that needs that type of service. So that's one thing I would add about that. Gotcha.
So we're talking about how we can kind of be cohesive with all these specializations, but I feel like it could also really fragment the profession. I think it could also make it harder to educate the public sometimes because you have different schools of thought. How or does it? And again, this is just a layman over here, right? I haven't been to medical school like you guys, but does it fragment the profession? And does it make it harder to educate the public? Dr. Justin, I'd like to start with you.
This is not my first career. As a missionary, I have a degree in nuclear medicine. The chiropractic profession is a wild profession to be in, right? It is very philosophically driven. You don't think like me, and so therefore you're against me kind of thing. This is why today is so important, today's discussion. We can bring different minds together, even though we might not agree on some things. We can still come together on keeping the main thing the main thing.
Mm.
And so when we have even our schools are set up. Some of them are more medical driven, some are more philosophically driven, upper cervical driven, straight up in here. Others are more focused on sports and such not. So when we come out of school, there's almost a divide just straight out of school. And that just doesn't go with our profession. That goes into how we view medicine as a whole, right? I'm sure all of us on this call have good colleagues that are across the aisle with physical therapists or DOs or MDs. But as a whole, going through college, I know that was kind of a sit back, wait a minute, we're not a part of them kind of thing. And so it was a divide right from the mindset from the get-go, where I was, rather than hey, let's come together and try and figure out the best way to do this together. Even though we might not agree on things, it was a learning curve, if you will. I knew what I was going to do going into chiropractic college. I was going right into the Clear Institute, right in scoliosis. This is what I was going to do. So there's no swaying me from that. But I could definitely see where younger students, more impressionable students, might have a difficulty navigating their purpose or where they're going with their practice.
Dr. Juan, any opinion on that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, like chiropractic, like what we do, right? Adjusting the spine, removing interference. If we were to treat all these different types of patients, they would all benefit. They would all improve at the end of the day, right? But I think there is some value in going deeper into what you can do to achieve the specific health goals of that particular patient, right? So in my case, like an adjustment's going to do wonders for that patient, but I have to take it a step further because of their goals. So I may use more technology. I may use software because I need to improve or quicken the recovery time for that particular patient, for their outcomes, for their goals, right? So I think that's where having your niche or having a more specialized practice can help certain individuals, because not everybody's going to have the same goal. Does that make sense?
It does. Dr. Lee, based on your last response, as far as the fragmentation of the profession and making it harder to educate the public, I'd like you to weigh in on that. What your thoughts are on that.
When you look in integration into a medical model, Americanized healthcare, how are we defined to the other people? That carries a ton of weight, regardless of how I define myself as a healthcare provider. What an orthopedist down the street sees me as is going to dictate whether they make a referral into me or not. What a little old lady in the back pew of my church sees me as is going to dictate whether she tells her friend to come, or have her ankle worked on, or so she can walk better. I do think that to Dr. Justin's point, as we have multiple definitions of who we are, it does kind of blur the waters a little bit from a profession wide standpoint. For us to have an individual definition of who we are and how our practice works is wonderful for our communities. But I do think that lack of cohesion and the infighting, we always circle the wagons and shoddy, and the old time saying in chiropractic care, I do think that is a disservice to our profession. By disallowing other folks to interact with us. Had a president of a local hospital was a patient of mine several years ago, and he's straight up said, we love chiropractors. He said, me and tons of my staff come to see chiropractors, and he said our providers don't refer to chiropractors because we don't know what the patient's going to get when they get there. And it's the same thing. When I make a referral outside of my office, I want to trust and know what my patient's going to experience. And for a larger healthcare entity not to know what they're going to get when they make a referral can be a disservice to our profession. So again, clarifying for our communities and for our providers who we are and what we do is a way that we can minimize that fractioning of chiropractic in general and the public science.
Dr. Josh, I'd love for you to weigh in as well.
Yeah, I love what Dr. Lee said because I can totally see that, right? The chiropractor that's right down the road from me, I don't know what's going to happen there. But what I can say, is that unanimously, if we go back to, the times of D.D. Palmer, founder of chiropractic, right? What was his overarching view of chiropractic? Well, chiropractic means by hand, right? So, he was really trying to influence the nervous system. He was really, and so, I think whatever facet that we practice, whatever technique, whatever technology that we're utilizing, I think that if you keep the nervous system as the forefront, it then trickles down. And that's a very complicated thing to do because, it's such a broad thing. It's like, okay, well, how are you changing the nervous system, right? What techniques are you using? Are you using EEGs to do pre and post studies? Are you using, insight scans? Are you using HRV? What are you using? I really do think that, with Dr. Juan, right, being a sports chiropractor, with Dr. Justin being, scoliosis based, Dr. Lee being more of kind of just a general practitioner, right, in terms of family medicine. I think it would be really cool, what we have in our office. We have a network of docs that do pediatrics. I think it would be really awesome to have more of those. And I'm sure, Dr. Justin has, a network of docs that does strictly scoliosis work. And, Dr. Juan strictly that does, sports work. I think it would be really cool to have a meeting of the minds of all of these and say, okay, at the core of what we do, let's create some type of statement, basically, and I know it's more complicated than that, but let's create some kind of statement that covers over all that we do. And then understand that if someone is, a young athlete or an older athlete, they are going to go to Dr. Juan. If someone, is looking for more generalized care and just looking for overall wellness, okay, that's, more of a Dr. Lee situation. Or, conversely, if we've got this idiopathic and we don't know why this curve is happening, right? Now that's a Dr. Justin thing. I think that we really need to get clear on what it is we're trying to affect and then be even more clear on how we're portraying that information out to the general public. That is the only way that I see that changing because, again, to Dr. Lee's point, we love you guys, but we don't know what our patients are going to get when they get to said chiropractor. And he's absolutely right. So I think that we need to get very, very clear. And we've been trying to do it for years. But I do think that there is a turning of the tide when it comes to new chiros coming out. They're more open to more things. It's less about, hey, my technique is better than yours, and more about, hey, nervous system first, and then everything else trickles below that.
Gotcha.
Hold on. Yes. Can I piggyback on that for just a sec? I think Dr. Josh stumbled on something that's really awesome. In the advent of future healthcare, overarching healthcare, where we, the powers that be, are looking to move to a model that is more patient-centered. Putting the patient in the center of a group of practitioners who have a narrower mindset is the future of healthcare. University of Texas, Austin Dell Medical Center started a program just like that several years ago with extremely expensive grants to kind of tap on the question I was asked earlier about, limitless funds. Michael Dell wrote a $50 million check and said, hey, we need to solve healthcare problems. How do we do that? And, they looked at the population, they took the data they had, and they said, well, we have a lot of musculoskeletal patients in an indigent population. That's a huge burden on healthcare. So how do we build a team that can come to this patient base, have the biggest impact, meeting the triple aim, better care, healthier communities for less cost. And they did just that. They put together a team of spine-focused practitioners. They have PTs, they have chiropractors, they have a cognitive behavioral therapist, they have PA, and there's an injectionist, a physiatrist on a 5 group. And a lot of folks said, whoa, spine care, where's your surgeon? They ended up not needing a surgeon in that they, again, from a common sense and conservative standpoint, took care of between 97 and 98% of the musculoskeletal problems of these patients. The other 2 to 3% that were surgical candidates, those cases were wrapped up with a nice little bow and put right on the goal line for the best surgeons in the area to score and have that wonderful outcome that patient needed. Our healthcare is so fractured. Again, I live in a county. Our county in Southwest Virginia just surpassed 100,000 people. If you're a much denser population area, that's a lot easier to do. But it does take the time of getting out to know the practitioners, the humility that Dr. Justin talked about. Of this is not in my wheelhouse. I need to know where I can get that patient to. So Dr. Josh is onto it. Collaborative patient-centered models are extremely effective, and they're extremely they have much better outcomes all the way across the board. So starting to build those in our communities is one of the best ways that we can promote our profession and have better outcomes for our patients.
Yeah. I think what we need to do is get a little bit better on the education piece, because I think that'll make it easier for the collaborative piece or the collaborative effort, because there's a lot of professions in the medical industry, even, not even just the medical industry, but that have such a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to chiropractic care. I think the education piece, starts within, right? Within the chiropractic community. I think it was on your podcast or your session, Dr. Lee, when you said one of the things that you do within your practice or within your group is we find where we can agree on the 98%, right? And not focus on the 2%. And I think the chiropractic community can do that as a whole, can do that a lot better. And I think if we can do that within the chiropractic community and create a better, tone for chiropractic care within the medical industry, I think that collaborative piece can come together a lot easier. Dr. Justin, did you have something that you wanted to say?
This is really great topics. Elevating, some of the chiropractors graduate with their doctor of chiropractic, and they're just many times just thrown to the wild. All right, here, go make changes, but necessarily don't always tell you how to make changes or how to make these relationships. And so these are key components. Some people are just born gifted talkers, but that's not everybody. If you're born into science and math, might not be into talking. So these are huge points that we're looking at.
Dr. Juan, I'm going to turn to you for a second here, and then I'll have the rest of you also kind of give your feedback on this question. But how can chiropractors specifically balance kind of the specialization while really promoting the profession as a whole?
That's a good question. I think utilizing or leveraging technology like we're doing right now is a huge part of it. I think just getting as much exposure, getting as much word out is what I'm currently trying to do. That's why I'm, going on your podcast. I'm doing other podcasts. I'm consistently posting on social media and Instagram and doing all these things because if we can leverage that, we can reach a lot more people. And I think that if we all started doing that, all the chiropractors really started to pour into that technology and really spreading the word that way, I think that we can reach a broader, wider audience a lot quicker. So I think that's one thing that I would like to see more of. I see it, but I don't see a lot of chiropractors doing it. But I think if we could start really putting our stuff and our education and everything that we know and really educating patients on the why chiropractic works, because a lot of people still don't know that chiropractic is not just for low back pain and neck pain, right? That's what I would say 90% of the patients that walk through my door, that's what they think. That's what their perception is. And there's a huge percentage of people that have never even been adjusted or even been to a chiropractor. So I think, I know you mentioned this a lot too, is education, it's awareness, it's bringing that out and getting in as much engagement in public speaking and seminars and doing all these types of things to try to get the word out as much as we can.
Got it. Thanks for that. Dr. Josh, what's your take on kind of the balancing the specialization and still really promoting the profession as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Lee hit this, Dr. Justin hit it, Dr. Juan hit it. Keeping the main thing. And quite honestly, what that looks like is, yes, do I specialize in pediatrics and prenatal and family care? Absolutely. But I can also speak to back pain. I can speak to, being able to be a well-rounded practitioner is knowing, what else is in your field, right? And understanding, maybe not to the depths that, I might not understand scoliosis to the depths that Dr. Justin does, but I can speak to it. And also I can maybe set up a conversation with Dr. Justin and say, hey, help me understand this better so that I can talk to the patients that come in that have scoliosis and either refer them to someone who's far more qualified to handle that or be able to help them myself if they're not an extreme case, right? So I think, the humility aspect is knowing what your limitations are and knowing who you serve, but also, to everyone else's point, is really getting in front of people and not being timid about what it is we do. One of the big things that I'm doing right now here in Virginia Beach is I'm getting in front of the CHKDs, the Children's Hospital, the King's Daughters, and getting in front of the heads of those facilities to help them understand, hey, yes, I respect what you guys do, but there is alternate ways, you have to be tactful in how you say things, but there are alternate ways in which to affect healthcare for these kids or these families, right? And so, patient education is massive. It's technology, absolutely, but you got to be careful with that too, because there's so much information, but there's also a lot of misinformation. So what I've been trying to do is like long form videos, YouTube, where people can actually go on there and watch a video, or I'll do an online, broadcast of a workshop or something to that nature, or host workshops in. It's required that people who come into my office, they must come to 3 workshops throughout the year. That is part of their patient agreement, because we want to help them understand why they are here. And that education can't always happen necessarily, tableside. So, I think, it's really a multifaceted question, but at the same time, I think, us being in congruence with one another, learning from one another, but then also the main thing, and getting in front of people.
Gotcha. Dr. Justin, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this, as you know, I don't do a whole lot of social media posts. I don't do a whole lot of interaction online, just not my bag. The table is the most important, the spine being the number 1, 4, and 6 reason for chronic pain disability in the United States, and it not being understood at all, as a whole. It also costs the most litigated in the United States. And it's a huge misunderstanding of actually what it is. And so for us to be able to say, here's what's actually happening in your body, here's how we're going to treat that, not just make you feel good, but here's how we're going to treat it, is game changing, right? And to take that message out to the public. And, when we look at the spine itself, most people think that just spine pain, the spinal injuries are, pain that goes down your legs or pain that's in the middle of your back, so radicular or proximal pain. When in fact, we know that spinal injuries can create post-concussion syndrome, can create tinnitus, it can create gastrointestinal issues, it can create radiating pain, it can create, all these different symptoms. And literature says this is what happens in the body. And so us be able to take out into the public and say, here's what the literature says, here's where we're at, hey, we can help in a unified front. Hey, we might not be the best at, you're bit by a shark and bleeding all over the place, but if you're in a car accident and you don't have fractures in your back and you're not bleeding all over the place, we're here. We're the best doctors in the world for this. We're going to help you recover. We're going to get those injuries to recover. We're going to work on restoring structure. We're going to get you back to your optimum. Game changing.
Gotcha. Dr. Lee, I'd love for you to weigh in as well.
First of all, I love this. This is awesome. I do think that we all, even though we have, a different practice approach, we are focusing on the 98% and, not infighting. And you're absolutely right. The best marketing that I can do is right there on my table by giving great care. The second best marketing I can do is ask patients to tell their friends and families, grassroots marketing campaigns. But as we continue to grow our profession, reaching out and telling our communities what we do through various, long form videos or interprofessional collaborative education sessions, referring to the chiropractor down the road that might do something better, getting out of a scarcity mindset into one more of abundance. That is how we're going to have the biggest impact on the planet. And, just it'll eventually lead us to world domination in healthcare. That's where we need.
I love it. All right. I'm bringing out my wheel.
This wheel is awesome.
I love the wheel, man. You got to spice it up, right? All right. Who's answering this challenge question? Dr. Juan. Look at that. Two questions. Okay.
A legend.
All
I'm the
right.
lucky one.
See, I love the dad jokes.
He's
man.
been waiting for that.
He's been waiting for it. He's got to post it on his monitor, just waiting for it. I'm going to say this. If you had full control over the future of chiropractic, full control, what would you push for? More specialization or more unified generalist approach?
Well, I think I would have both, but I would also push to have more of a standardization within chiropractic. I think that's why we have such a difficulty with understanding what the chiropractor down the road does different from what I do, because I feel like we have such a open floor to do, kind of whatever we want to do as a chiropractor. And I also think that we need to regulate a little bit more our schools and how, what it takes to become a chiropractor, how to get into chiropractic school. I think if we can tighten that up a little bit, I think that would also help our profession as a whole. Because I don't know if it's changed, but when I went to school, it just seemed like anybody that wanted to be a chiropractor could just go and they would take anybody. And so I think that needs to change. So I think this standardization is going to allow us to be more cohesive as a profession, and then from there, being able to do whatever you're passionate about, whatever you want to focus on, and be an expert at. You can do that as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that. All right. This is going to be fun. I don't know how crazy this is going to... I'm kidding. It's not going to get crazy, but I'm calling this the hot take round, okay? We're going to be possibly busting myths about the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out some bold predictions, right? And then each of you have 60 seconds to say whether you think it's true or false and why. That simple. 60 seconds, true, false, and why. Some of them might be harder to answer, but let's just try to keep it as close as possible. All right. And the way we'll do it is we'll start with you, Dr. Lee. We'll go to Dr. Juan, then Dr. Josh, and Dr. Justin. That's just how it works on my screen. And then we'll do that for 3 separate questions. Here we go. Chiropractic will eventually be as mainstream as primary care.
True. As consumerism has crept into healthcare over the last few years, patients are making their healthcare decisions with their own dollars. Our insurance companies are broken. That whole sick model is becoming outdated. People are looking to be more proactive and live more expansive lives, and they're willing to spend their money to make that happen. And we are a wonderful gateway for them to do so.
Awesome. Dr. Juan.
True. I agree with that. I think people are becoming a lot more aware of actual health and not just, like you said, care. I think COVID really helped kind of open up people's perception and kind of take the blinders off to what being healthy actually entails.
Dr. Josh.
True. Chiropractic is definitely got a hold on the market. Holistic care has a hold on the market right now. With technology, with information, people are becoming increasingly more aware of the alternatives that they have. They're growing increasingly more frustrated with our medical system. They can't even get in to see a medical doctor for months on end. COVID, to Dr. Juan's point, was a great wake-up call for a lot of people. Just how that herd mentality, you must do this, right? So I think that people are starting to become increasingly more aware. They're looking for answers. They're looking for hope. They're looking for people who genuinely care about people. And that is the holistic profession. That is chiropractors.
Awesome. Dr. Justin.
Well, I'm going to give you an answer that I give my wife. The answer is yes. Not quite true, not quite false. Holistic practitioners like us may or may not take insurance. We definitely work outside the box as a whole. Our profession is not necessarily fighting, but we are going up against trillions of dollars of pharmaceutical, of insurance, of a lot of things that we're coming against as a whole. While I'm confident COVID woke people up, people are seeking alternative care, I still get the question every day, do you take this insurance? Well, why does my doctor do this? Where's your evidence? And so I'm going to say, yes, we have the possibility to definitely take mainstream healthcare by the horns and run with it. But we're also coming up against a beast.
All right, same order. Next question. Dr. Lee, you're up. Insurance will never fully cover preventative chiropractic. That will never change.
I say false. Again, as consumerism pushes in and as insurance realizes with that overlay of AI that they can save billions of dollars a year through preventative care, which mainstream is moving, I say that they will try to make themselves legitimate as an entity by covering more preventative type measures, chiropractic being one that has a huge downstream effect both in patient lifestyle and exuberance of life, and also in millions and billions of dollars in savings for the insurance company.
Dr. Juan, same question. Dr. Josh?
Yeah, I would say false. I just don't see, big pharma going anywhere anytime soon. I believe that they can kind of create the market the way that they want to. I believe that insurance companies are going to follow suit and they're always going to be backed by them. So, in terms of, reactive care, sure, we were already seeing that. But in terms of proactive care, there's no money to be made in, healthy people. So why would you cover it,
Yeah. Dr. Justin?
Well, the insurance world is a for-profit business. So at some point, I would hope that they'd wake up and say, look, this person, we're saving X amount of dollars on this person. But as of today, that's just not going to happen. I know that personally, I haven't had insurance in 7 years. No need for it. I do a Christian chair. I've saved tens and tens of thousands of dollars on that. But it's a for-profit business, the insurance company. So as a whole, our American model is a reactive system.
Great answers. I'm on the fence, for whatever it's worth. I feel like because the insurance industry is a for-profit industry, I feel like they're going to find a way to capitalize. Honestly, I think they're going to come up with maybe holistic or functional plans for people that want to do that and have the extreme scenarios covered as well when it comes to surgery or whatever have you, so that they're not covering doctor's visits when they need to go and check, because they have the flu or what have you. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they'll get creative. We'll see. But all good answers. Thanks. Again, same order. Dr. Lee, we're going to start with you. In 10 years, will there be more independent practices or corporate chiropractic practices and chains?
I do think that the true or false. I do think there will be more conglomerates, more corporate type chiropractic, be they chains, franchises, what have you. Cost of doing business has gone through the roof, and again, from a profitability standpoint, if you can spread out overhead and still be a profitable entity, I think that's kind of the future as I see it.
Got it. Dr. Josh?
I think true. I think you're going to start seeing more conglomerates, but multidisciplinary conglomerates with chiropractic, so you're going to have, a Dr. Lee, you're going to have a Dr. Justin, you're going to have a Dr. Juan, all within one office, because people are realizing that, if I can, from a business model, if I can, appease or, have a naturopathic doc in there with me, now you just become a one-stop shop for all things for whoever comes into your office. So yeah, I do think that you're going to start seeing more of these. I think it's going to be the way of the future, and it's going to be less, independent brick and mortars, and it's going to be more, cohesion amongst other healthcare and holistic providers.
Dr. Justin?
Again, I'm going to answer yes. Sorry, man. I wrote a thesis on the Affordable Care Act coming in years and years ago and what was coming in. So if you take insurance, yes, everything was going to start filtering in. If you guys look at your healthcare, there's only a few systems in each one of your states, if there's even a few systems, right? And so if we're taking insurance, that's probably going to happen in that way. They just made it so difficult. If we're having our each independent brick and mortar, obviously every doctor's business front is what is your out plan, right? And so building something that's transferable to Dr. Juan is brilliant, because then Dr. Juan can come in and take over. It's no longer Dr. Justin's office. This is X Chiropractic, and there's 10 offices. We kind of know what we're getting into, Chick-fil-A style. Right? We got the best service. They know what you're doing every time. However, our profession has a huge deficit is when we eat our young many times. And so you're coming out of chiropractic school and you're sold this, I have $250,000 in debt and I'm going to be making $70,000. Well, the city I live in right now, if you're not making $93,000, you are breaking even at $93,000, breaking even, right? So there's no way you can even get by. So I would like to say that, yes, I'd like to see these corporations, all of us come together and be under one roof. And man, I just say, hey, go right next door. The guy's right next door. He's next room down. We're all working together. But our business structure, our mindset is to change as a profession to make that happen.
Gotcha. Great answer. I don't mind your yes answers, by the way. So no apologies needed. All right. Bringing out the wheel, guys. Here we go. Dr. Justin. Okay.
Talk to me, Goose.
Here we go. So what's the biggest risk to chiropractic's growth over the next decade?
The biggest risk to chiropractic's growth? That's a really good question. We have, I think, overextended ourselves in many areas as a whole. Chiropractic is brand new. It's brand new in a field. And chiropractic colleges are popping up all over the place, which in my city is saturated. They're like Starbucks. They're on every corner here. And so the biggest risk is saturating our market. Not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but, with that, you also have the infighting within chiropractic. And so I see that as being a huge deficit. These colleges are pushing out people. And if you know much about colleges, they can ask for money and they have almost a limited number of money that they can be given once they're accredited, right? So they just ask the government for money, and then also they just bring in students, and it's a for-profit business.
Good answer. Love that. All right. So as we wrap up, let's leave our listeners with some key takeaways and maybe some bold predictions. We'll see. But I'll start with you, Dr. Justin. If every patient listening today could take away one action step to prioritize their spinal health, what would it be?
Active participation in your spinal health would be one to get checked by one of these doctors here, hands down. Even a bad chiropractor is going to have benefits to you, right? Hands down, no doubt. Get seen early, and be checked out. And that just isn't just you; it's your entire family. Everybody's got a spine. Everybody's got a nervous system. There's a lot of really great doctors out there. There's a lot of really bad doctors out there as well. But however, they are all very good about checking you and making sure that the body is healing appropriately.
Dr. Lee, what's your boldest prediction for chiropractic in the next decade?
World domination. I do see technology helping us educate the public to what we truly do, so that it can help them give themselves better options for living a more expressive life. chiropractic care is definitely going to be a big part of that.
Mm. All right, Dr. Josh, I guess I would consider this the last final challenge question. So you get lucky here. But if you could change one thing about the way chiropractic is practiced or perceived, what would it be?
I would really love the consumers of chiropractic, patients who are coming to chiropractic, to understand that at the root of all care plans, at the root of every practitioner's practice, there is a heart of gold that we truly want to see people thrive and succeed and, exhibit health and express life the way that it was meant to. I think that a lot of people come into my office and say, oh, that, is a money grab or this, that, and the other, but it's all in how you present it. And when you present it from a heart space, when you present it from a place of love and genuine concern and care about people, that registers. And so while I know that there's a lot of different, specialities in this particular podcast, we all want one thing for our patients, and that is for them to achieve health at the highest level possible. So, for me, I think that, loving, giving, and serving out of my own abundance and helping spread the chiropractic gospel, as it were, or the message, is super, super important. And that's what we're doing. So I'm not sure if I answered that question well, but no, that's where we're at.
I think you did. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, I guess I'll end by saying thank you, all of you, for taking the time out today. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I appreciate all your insight. Honestly, thank you to each and every single one of you.
Thanks for getting us together, Ali.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. More to come, hopefully. So, and just like that, we made it to the finish line without anyone throwing out their vac in the process. I might have
throwing fists or anything else.
Some discomfort. Yeah. Dr. Juan, I might stop by in a minute. But we've covered prevention, performance, innovation, the future of chiropractic, proving once again that taking care of your spine is way cooler than people give it credit for. Seriously, like, why is spinal health not trending yet? Like, let's do it. But a huge shout out to our incredible panel for dropping knowledge, busting myths, and keeping things engaging. And to our listeners, if you learned something today or just realize you've been slouching the entire time, do us a favor, follow and subscribe so you don't miss the next discussion. Maybe leave a review. And if you're still on the fence about chiropractic care, go ahead and book a visit with a professional. Your future self will thank you. I promise. That is a guarantee from me, whatever it's worth. Anyway, your chiropractor will probably thank you too. But anyway, this has been Beyond Adjustments, where we keep your mind engaged, your body aligned, and your dad jokes finely tuned. Until next time, stand tall, stay strong, and keep moving forward. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.